Hey folks, in this video I would like to show you some practical tips in how to best scan in your hand sketches, clean them up a little bit in Photoshop, and then how we can compose everything inside Illustrator. I'm on the Mac side, so I'm going to use the built-in scanning function. In preview, when you're on a PC, you will probably have to install the driving software that comes with your scanner. Here at home, I have a pretty bad scanner. It's just a normal inkjet printer with a set excuse of a scanner put on top. But for scanning in some hand sketches, it's okay, because most times then I would sketch over them afterwards anyway. Okay, and I would like just to scan the whole page, nothing else. I'm going to select color and billions of colors, and not, for example, black and white, because then I only have thousands of colors or grays. And you want to have the highest amount of possible tones, because essentially when the scanner scans this document, it has to understand maybe the different gradations, or what's white, what's really bright gray, and because this is also a pretty bad scanner, it clips out some of the important information. So that's the reason highest amount of colors as possible. For resolution, and also as a note, while this is a Mac interface, the things about colors and res, etc., Mac, PC, everywhere the same. If you want to print something one-to-one, well, we could go maybe with 200, not 100, or at least 150 dpi, so that's dots per inch. How many dots, for example, when the printer is going to print, does it have for the image to print down? So if I have 300 or 600 dots on an inch of paper, I can print down a lot of details. If, of course, I only have 75 color dots on an inch, well, that image will look kind of blocky. So for example, everything on the screen is 72, or the web. 300 is good for one-to-one. If you want to scan something in and print it bigger, like double, go to 600. No color correction, manual. What do we have here? Brightness. Yeah, I can adjust this a little bit, but actually, no, I don't really want anything to be adjusted here. None, so I just leave it as is. And just click scan. So now the scanner is just warming up and then scanning the whole image in. So you see, actually, I do not take the time to mark certain areas of a picture I want to scan. I just simply scan the whole page at once, and then in Photoshop I start cutting it apart. In my opinion, that works a little bit better. So I'll give it a more second to scan. And yeah, last step and save. Okay, perfect. So let's take a look at what we have. Here's my image. I can actually see, you see the paper actually had a small yellow tint. Now this page is actually white, so it, naughty software, it actually filtered out that color already. A normal scanner, like the one we have at school, doesn't really do that if you just tell it to scan untouched, but that's okay. So export, save it as TIFF. You never want to save anything remotely as JPEG. PNG, okay, but TIFF is best. Okay, save, okay, good. So that was everything about scanning. Now let's go into Photoshop and open the image there. And let's do a check. So I drop her, I click this background, 254. So it's not 100% white. White would be 255. So the software adjusted a little bit the paper color to be white. And this is, again, a scanner slapped onto a printer. So you see the, ooh, this looks pretty terrible. And it clips out a lot of lines, which also has an advantage. So if I goes really thinly, those lines probably won't even be scanned, and only where I press harder with my pen, that's actually going to be scanned in. So, but in Illustrator, at one point you want to take all these different parts and then put it on a page, maybe move them around a little bit. So, for example, let's say here, I would like to cut this one out and then those parts. I just made up this page so I quickly have something to scan in. But before we do this, I just want to do some further adjustments. So for example, I can go to levels. So what's level? You have black and white in 255 steps, and you see there's a histogram. So basically we have a lot of white, hardly anything black on this image, and you see this goes up, and this is basically a quantity representation of how much white do we have in this image. So to make everything a little bit really super white, I could, for example, move this one over to the left, and you see that the more I do it, at one point it clips out more of the fine gray tones, so you have to be really careful. From the eyedropper, I know 255, that was actually the color, so I set this one to 255, so one tone. I moved my white point over to the left, so everything is now really perfect white. Let's prove my theory. Eyedropper, click, yes, it is white. But what's up with those scan lines? Look at that. That's not even black. That's kind of like some gray. So let's go to levels. And here's black. So we can now say black, medium gray, and white. And I could say when I move this one to here, so where medium gray is, then I say everything medium gray make black, and from there fade everything into white. And you see if I do this, I make really light lines stronger. So I could, for example, this way give the drawing a little bit more contrast, but you have to be careful. If you do it too much, it looks kind of computerish. So just a notch. And then once you did this, repeat exactly with the same settings all the other scans, so it's nice and consistent. Okay, fantastic. So next step, I would like to cut those parts out. So let's take this one here, copy, make a new document, okay, and paste. There it is. So the silly background layer I'm just sent into retirement, and now maybe I would like to rotate this a little bit there. Okay, but now I have this white background. I could say, hey, I could just start erasing it. Nope, that's not what we're going to do. Because in generally, you want to not touch your drawing as much as possible and keep it untouched. So if at one point you have to adjust something, you can go back. So what I'm going to do is, but hold on, I'm just actually undoing everything. Tell the rotation. Step back. There, okay. So we go first, select color range. Then I click on this white background. You see I have quick mask turned on, and there's a fuzziness. So what does this mean? So I clicked on white on the background, and then you see what's red is actually what is not selected or not white. At least it has not the same white color as what's under my eyedropper. So for example, if I click on black, there you see it selects all the white. And with the fuzziness, now I could say, well, this white tone and neighbor tones include as well. So you don't want to overdo it, because then there again you start clipping out really fine lines. But maybe something like here, try to get rid of most of the terrible noise, and some of the rest later I just do with the paint tools. Okay, so now I have my selection done, and I selected the background. And the background I would like to be inverse, so I click on inverse. So you see now actually only my drawing, so everything that's black is selected. And now inside my layers, I could go to the mask tool, add layer mask. So open a new layer and paint bucket and black. There. Whoops. Fill it. And there you see, for example, all the stuff that's being made transparent. But then this way you also can see all that other stuff that's still left. So now I could go back. See, I can select my image or the layer mask. I switch to black, go to my paint tool, and for example, paint in my mask. So yes, you heard correctly. I'm not actually painting on my scanned image. I'm just painting my mask. So I clean this one up. So this mask interactively is being used to clip that image. So I could right click and say disable layer mask, and there's my original drawing. And enable. So you see, pretty awesome. So for example, let's assume there are some spelling errors in the text. Zip. Let's retire them as well. Now I have to properly change this a little bit there. We all see, no, we don't even know where maybe once upon a time. By the way, it's not too bad of a TV show. At least says my wife. And you don't tell that I made this joke. And let's rotate this one. No, but actually it's an interesting TV show. I like watching it. It's kind of interesting, different take. Of course, it's not very brain stimulating, but that's okay. So this layer we can delete. Zip. There's now my quick sketch, and this one I'm going to save as Photoshop, not TIFF, because I want those layers to be active. So let's maybe call this one scan. Zip. And okay, so that's for example for Photoshop. So here we have no Illustrator, and I'm going to give you a quick idea about how I would now structure everything. So I have this image. I'm going to place desktop. There's my scan, place, and what does Illustrator tell me as gradient 8-bit? It will be imported as, yeah, okay, not a big deal. Okay, perfect. So you see, the nice thing is, because this is just an image, I can scale it down. I shouldn't, of course, make it bigger, because then you can see maybe the problem with the scan. Well, actually, you know, I scanned this one 300 dpi, so I could make it a little bit bigger. But if this is a page, you don't want this one to be that big, because then it really looks blocky. Anyway, the nice thing is I can move this one freely around. You see it is transparent. I can also rotate this a little bit to adjust it. And for example, I had some hand sketches and like annotations, etc. So for example, I would use layers. So let's go to the layer tool. You have them also here, layers, create a new layer. And for example, there I call this one text. And here I call this one images. There. So why do I do this? I would like to quickly be able to separate my scans from text. So for example, now I can click on this lock. I can't click on my text anymore, my image. Now I can go to text, go to this text layer, click and say overmolded handle. And for example, go to here and say removable purple foot ring. Okay, perfect. Zip and zip. And let's say here, hand mixer bowl concept. So, let's talk a little bit about text and typography. So when I click this text, I could go to character and see all the nice stuff I have here in terms of fonts. So for example, something I use a lot for my own business, I really like the universe, specifically because you have nice and condensed cuts, so I can get a lot of letters actually onto the page. But maybe those I don't want to look like readable text. I want maybe this one to look like a hand sketch or written by hand. So I have actually some fonts installed I really like. Is it Danielle? For example, there. Maybe they're a little bit too big. 10 points. Yeah, this one maybe should be 16 points. So I work a little bit with the font size to make a nice hierarchy of what's important, what's not. Hand mixer. So let's add a slogan: making food preparation fun. We all like fun stuff. So this is secondary. So I'm making this one maybe 12 points. Well, maybe I put it below. Okay. Perfect. So, where do you get fonts? One site I find really good is actually font, and don't laugh how I say this word, font squirrel. It's a really tough word for me to say. And you have a really nice amount of typefaces there. A few things you really should look out for. First, you want to have fonts that have more than one style, because otherwise you only have on the way how it looks. You don't have a condensed, or maybe, let's see, what do we have here? So we have a regular, an italic, a bold, a black, a light, an extra light. So it's actually really nice when you have different cuts, because as you can see inside Illustrator, I can use the different cuts, etc. for, well, just explaining how something could look. So maybe, don't I have a condensed italic with italics? Oh, there's no condensed italic. Well, that would have been fantastic, but okay. Well, let's keep it this way. And also on font scroll under classification, you have a lot of different styles. So for example, it's the classical classification, or nice wording, classical classification, sans serif, slab serif, serif. Interestingly, they have sans serif twice. Okay, display or calligraphic, black letter. I would just try to write most of the stuff with sans serif or serif typefaces. So where you have those serifs are actually really good on your eyes. They're sometimes easier to read, while actually sans serifs are sometimes cleaner but less ideal for your eyes to read. It's maybe a little bit subjective, maybe also what you're used to. But font mixing is a good skill to get comfortable with. Let's take a look at handwriting, hand drawn there. So architect's order, something I looked into, it's also not too bad. Well, this typeface doesn't work. Here's Danielle, Desirel. Let's go back to Illustrator. What do I have here, Danielle? Desirel. And you see sometimes, now, there can be a nice difference. See, the Danielle runs a little bit wider, is also lighter. The other one is more hand-drawn, a little bit more feminine, maybe, if you want to say, or childish, or it's not a very hard-looking typeface. So I'm actually going with the Danielle here. So then you can click on download, and then either on your Mac or PC, you just install the typeface and can continue working with it. On the Mac, I simply go to here, double click it, and say install, and for those as well. Since I'm not on a Mac, or not on a PC, I can't show how this looks on a PC right now. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about styles. So in Illustrator 1.0, you're going to have a lot of text, so you want to be quickly able to adjust text really, really fast. That's the reason why you want to use styles. So when I go to Window, Type, and Character Styles, let's open this. And where's that window? Oh, it's on my main screen. Let's bring it on my sketch tablet. There, Character Styles. So I can, for example, click New, or go to here and say New Character Style. And I have to bring over that dialog. And let's say I call this one hand text. And go to here, click it, and maybe make a double click. And there you see, hey, this is Danielle, regular, 8 points. Okay, well, it's all nice. So you see when I double click on this one, I have a plus here, but I want to have this one hand text. Still have a plus. I click one more time. No, this is only really hand text. So where are these styles useful for? Well, take a look at this. So I double click this one, and then I can go to General and Basic Character, and for example say, nah, too big, smaller. And you see the text is being adjusted. So it's basically a style, and every text that's using that style gets that change. Maybe it should be CMYK or cyan or green. So you can change colors for everything instantly with just one click. So that makes it really, really nice. So let's say here we make an... Oh, what happened to the name? And there. Okay, let's go to here. Make a new. Maybe this one I call sub text. And go to here. Maybe make a new one and call this one headline. Okay. So headline, double click. Okay, let's go to here. Double click and 4:7 condensed. Okay, perfect. Let's go to the headline, and maybe this doesn't pop out enough. So I go to basic character and maybe 55 or maybe 57. So it's a fatter cut, so it has more black value. So great, and let's say I would like to add some additional text to it. So blah, 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 to explain the product, more text. Okay. Okay, click it and say subtext. And there you see, I didn't even need to select all the text and got adjusted. Let's move to there. Okay. Little tip about when you write text, you can click and type something, or you can go to the text tool and click and drag and then type something. You might think it's the same, but Illustrator treats it differently. So check out what happens if I do this. Now you committed instant suicide to every font designer. You stretched their typeface. And I spent so many months on making a good typeface and you destroyed it. Let's click this one and go to here and nothing happens. So that's kind of like the way how Illustrator treats text a little bit different. If you just click, it works then more like a graphic, which I can change. And if I click and drag, then I'm just creating a text frame into which I can write text. And then if I, for example, adjust those frames, it just adjusts the text flow, but it doesn't really adjust the size or anything. So you see here how this one got 73 font size and character, and there should be here like this text got scaled 100%. So most times if I just write one line, then I just click. Otherwise, if I write more text, I always then create a text block. And I think, what do I have here? Yeah, this is bad. So zip. And then I can copy and paste. This one I delete there. Where's my text block? Here. And paste it in. Oh, come on. There. And then maybe Control Shift B or Apple Shift B. No. Control Shift B, Apple Shift B. Let's see, what was it? Apple Shift B, yeah, or Control Shift B on the PC. You can turn the bounding box on and off, which is kind of like those scale elements. They can be really annoying if you don't need them. Control Shift B, turn them off, and then you can just move the object nicely. And maybe with the text frame, I can click on these dots and move this, for example, up. So I shorten it a little bit. I can move those parts nicely around. Okay, so that's a little bit about typography. So let's take a look at errors. They're not super awesome in Illustrator, but for the annotation stuff, might be nice to explore. So I could click and, for example, draw a path there. And go to the line tool, arrowheads, maybe this one. Ooh, wrong direction. Let's see which one might fit. Maybe the style there, or that one. The point size, maybe we can leave. Maybe there's a sketch aesthetic we could add. So you see there, I have limited abilities to do this with there. So let's see, maybe 0.25. Yeah, this looks now a little bit better, but the problem is my arrowhead is kind of gone. So maybe you and there. Could, for example, copy the style. So you click eyedropper, this line. Interestingly, it didn't do it, so I'm going to do it by hand. There. And then, of course, we can start adding some colors to it. So via color contrast, you start popping it out a little bit more. Now, I don't really have any serious arrowheads, so I'm going to say, go away. And you know what I'm doing? Click, click, and click. Eyedropper, you. This is so annoying. I actually should pick the style from that line. Okay. Brushes, swatches, where are the styles? Parents, window, stroke, stroke, stroke. Thought there were styles. Well, maybe they solved it differently. No. Actually, right now I don't know where that they put that to. I didn't use it for some time because very often I actually then in another program like I sketched those arrows by hand. But we can also do this in here. I mean, it's not a big deal. We can just the size is correct. So 2.5 there. Go to the stroke, and then we just have to adjust this back to 2.5. Okay, so you see we can get then your arrowheads down by yourself. Or maybe here we can also do maybe something like this. So we make a rounded ring. 0.25. Whoops. A little bit too big. 0.25. Uniform. Yeah, should be all there. Yeah, okay. Good. And you. Yeah. So you see, it gets a little bit of a hand-drawn node. And I mentioned before, if we then start maybe coloring everything a little bit. So here I'm going to reverse the direction because you see the stroke actually starts pretty thick and then actually it gets thinner, and the thinner part of this line I would like to be where my text is. So there and there. See that looks a little bit better. For example, here, put this one to there, and maybe pull it out a little bit. There actually it doesn't look too bad. So I'm curious what happens in case we do it this way. So we start thick and then we thin it out. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's okay as well, but the problem is you see how this flows. It's not really ideal. So I'm going to delete this line and there. And then I do, maybe this. Copy and paste. And move this one to there, there, overlap it. So this way you see they fade out on their own. Okay. So I hope that this actually gave you some good ideas about how to maybe think about what you do in Illustrator and what you do in Photoshop. Now there are some people who like doing all these presentations in Photoshop because it seems so convenient, but Photoshop is made for touching up photos and not layouting. For me as a graphic designer, doing stuff in Photoshop layout-wise is kind of like one of the major sins in graphic design. The main reason behind that is Photoshop, if you send it to print, it's being pixel by pixel, and text is not actually drawn. Text, like a font, is a mathematical shape, so it's always crisp, and that's the reason why you want to print something like from Illustrator or InDesign with the text, etc., written there and not in Photoshop, because in Photoshop that text has a high chance to look more blurry. And I know this one was kind of like a half an hour crash course into Photoshop and Illustrator for how to scan, touch up, and then place objects. There are a few things here and there to add a note as well, but actually for the majority, this is kind of like fully explaining the workflow you should try to get used to.